Okay, so I have all my papers picked out, and I decided for my book I'm going to do 8 different pattern papers and then repeat the 8 again. So what we need to do now is cut down our bags. I'm going to set the paper aside just for a minute. I'm going to pull out my trimmer, and we're going to cut these bags down. So how I do this is I'm going to fold my bag in half where my flap is in, and I'm going to line up my bag. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. There we go. So I'm going to line up my bags at the 6 3/4 inch mark on my trimmer. So it's going to basically cut off this jagged edge flap here. I'll show you after I cut this. So then you have this little piece that I just cut off. So I'm going to do all of my bags. So now it has just a straight line across the top. So we'll do all the bags at 6 3/4. And I just make sure that this edge of my bag right here is lined up on the line. And then just cut. Line it up. And then cut the little flap off the end. Sometimes when you're lining this up, this part down here isn't always straight, but I want all of my bags to line up perfectly on the edge, and then these will line up pretty well. So it's not always perfect. It's a paper bag, you know, they're not all exactly the same size. In general, you know, height and length is pretty even, but if you look at most of the flaps here on the bottom, they're not all made the same. Some of them have a little notch out of one corner, some of them have a straight corner, so it just depends. That's what I like about the paper bags, though, is that they're not exactly perfect. So you don't have to be so terribly picky about everything being that perfect. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to set that aside, is I'm going to take these bags and I'm going to do my measuring right now. So pen, pencil, whatever you use, this first flap, we don't need to do anything on the outside of this flap because this is going to be attached to our cover, so we're going to leave that side alone. But this flap, if you want a piece of paper to go here and a second piece of paper to go here, we're going to measure these sections out. And I just write it on the bag because I'm going to cover it up anyway. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to measure this. And for the ones I'm using, the standard paper bags in white, my measurements are going to be, and I'm going to measure my width first. And my width on this one is about 3.5. So I'm going to cut it, I like about 1/8 of an inch showing, not 1/4. So I'm going to write down this is going to be 3 3/8. So 3 3/8 by, and all of my bags are pretty much all the same width. If you look at it, you line them all up, they're pretty much the same width. So I just take this measurement and I write it on all my bags, and they all line up pretty well. So going this way, my width will be 3 3/8, and then my length on this one is going to be 5 1/4. So 5 1/4. Now sometimes it's a little off on some of the bags. So when I cut my papers, I don't cut any of the papers until I have measured every single bag. Just a little tip. I've done that before and then some of them didn't fit. So I either glued it down wrong or it looked terrible. So then my width on this one is 6 3/4. And like I said, this one I'm actually going, yeah. So this is going to be about 6 5/8. So 6 5/8 by, and I'm just going to measure this again just to make sure, by 5 1/4. So there's that one. Now, the measurements on this side are going to be slightly different. You can't just go and measure the bags like this. The measurement on this side is going to be different the way that I do it because we are going to attach this one to this bag. So, this measurement is going to be 6 3/4, but I leave a 1/2 inch here on the bottom, on this bottom half, for attaching my strip of adhesive. It's going to be right here, and then I have a 1/4 inch left on the edge for expansion as I add things to the bag. So my measurement for this bag is going to be 6 1/4 by, and this one's going to be 5 1/4 also. So 6 1/4 by 5 1/4 for that side. And then we repeat the process. And you always want to measure this part of your bag because these bottoms, they're not all the same width sometimes. So you want to make sure you measure. And this one's going to be 3 3/8 also by, and I just double checked these heights, 5 1/4. And then this one should be the same as this first one here. So it should be 6 5/8. Yeah. 6 5/8 by 5 1/4. There we go. Okay, so then again, on this side, our measurement should match this one, which should be 6 1/4. So we'll double check that that is going to be 6 1/4. Oh, my throat's growing. And our height is going to be 5 1/4. And then again, one more for this side. Measure our flap. I know this is kind of repeating, but this is part of my step-by-step process. So this will be 3 3/8. And should be 5 1/4. We'll double check. Yes, 5 1/4. We're getting lucky on these bags. And sometimes it's only about 1/8 of an inch off, so it's just a small adjustment. And this one's going to be 6 5/8. Yep. By 5 1/4. Okay, now we're not going to measure on this side because this bag, in order to get pockets on both sides of the bags, those ones will be attached. But in order to get your pocket for the other side, we need to attach 2 of the large panels together. So we're going to actually make a flap that's going to look like this. So we don't want to adhere paper on either side of this because these bags are going to be attached together. So we have one set of 3 bags for the left side, and then we're going to have a set of 3 bags on the right side. So our pockets will be over here on this side. So then we're going to measure, this big flap will be a big flap, and that's going to be 6 5/8. by 5 1/4. And then our small flap over here is going to be 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. Okay, so then we don't need to measure this part of the flap. Obviously it's going to be the same as this side, but it's also going to be adhered to this bag to create our pocket right here. So we need to measure this side. And that's going to be 6 1/4 by 5 1/4. Okay, so then that one. Then we will measure this big flap or large panel. That's going to be 6 5/8. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 5 1/4. Yeah. 5 1/4, and then our small flap over here, 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. Okay. And then we have our last bag. It's going to be attached. So this should be 6 1/4. Yep. 6 1/4 by 5 1/4. And then our last two measurements are going to be this large panel and small flap. And this flap is going to attach to our back cover. So this should be 6 5/8 by 5 1/4. Yep. And this one should be 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. And these are just the measurements that I like. You can add another 1/4 inch, or take away another 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch this way, and another 1/8 this way if you want a bigger border of your paper bag. So if you take your measurement, and this flap right here is about 3 1/2, you could do 3 1/4 if you want more of the paper bag showing on the edge. But I just do 1/8 of an inch. So there is the measurements for the right side and the left side of the bags. And they'll all go together like that. So like I said, these will be attached for pockets. And then this will be attached for a pocket. These two large areas will be attached. Whoops. And then your pockets will be on the right side over here. So then we'll have 3 pockets on each side. So that's how the bags get measured. Now onto the paper. And what I've done is I've laid out my paper the way I want it to go on my bags. So we're actually going to take this first section for the left side of the album, and what I do, you guys can do this however you want, but this is how I do it. I just take a piece to start off with, and I set it on the flap, like so, with a little bit of my border sticking out. And then I just take another piece of paper and I set that one on the large side with the flap out, just to see if I like the way that the two papers coordinate for that page. And that's how I pick all my papers for the album. And I've picked out 8, so I have 8 papers that I'm going to cut, and then I'm going to repeat them again for the other side in the same order. So let's go ahead and start cutting our paper. I'm going to move all of these over here in reverse order so I can cut them in the correct order I had them for my album. So we're going to start off with our small flap at 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. I'm going to take my paper cutter. I'm going to line this up at the 3 3/8. And just cut. So then I have a 3 3/8 inch strip, and my length, or my height, I'm sorry, needs to be 5 1/4. So I'll line this up at the 5 1/4 inch on my trimmer and slice that off. So then I have a piece for my flap. So this is going to go right here on my little flap. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere that down using my ATG gun. And I do all 4 sides of the paper. Just to make sure that it's going to stick. Now this paper is kind of thin. It's not as thick as some of the double-sided cardstock designer papers you can get. It's kind of thin, so I definitely do all 4 sides on this. And then I just kind of eyeball this to where it's in the center and then press it down. Make sure all my edges are down really good so they don't start coming up. And then we have the first part of our pocket. This is going to be a pocket. Now you don't have to make this a pocket when you attach it to the front cover. You can just attach all this. But then you'll only have 4 pockets for the whole album. So I use this as a pocket. Okay, let's cut this page. It's going to be 6 5/8. The trimmer out again. Let's do it over here. So 6 5/8. Right there. 5 1/4. Then we have our 6 5/8 by 5 1/4 inch piece. And we're going to adhere that right next to this one. So then it's going to give us our larger panel. So I'm going to run adhesive down all 4 sides. I'll try to get a little closer. All 4 sides, and then I just run a strip right down the middle, just to make sure that this paper is not going to go anywhere. Make sure my hearts are the right direction. And then this, again, I'm just going to kind of eyeball the center, but I'm going to move it a little closer to the one edge on the right side. Push it down really flat, make sure it's all stuck. Now, I have a bigger gap on this left side than I do over here. And the reason I did that is because this paper is really thin and the bag is really thin, so having this really close together here on this edge is going to give it a little more strength on that side. And then this is where I'll be cutting my notch out. So that is the first part of the page. This paper is so cute. So then we're going to cut the piece for this side, which is 6 1/4 by 5 1/4, and that one is this piece. So 6 1/4 by 5 1/4. this one, we're going to adhere to this side over here. And as you can see, we're going to get that, you know, closer to this side here. There's going to be, get it straight, there's going to be about a 1/2 inch gap here. And that's because I'll show you how to put the score tape right up against this edge here without going onto the paper. And then we still have a 1/4 inch room for expansion. So I'm going to attach this one. Again, all 4 sides. And then right down the middle. Then we're going to open up the bag so it's not bulky on the other side. So just go ahead and open your flap. And then you're going to want to align it closer to this side just to give that some more strength over there. Make sure your paper's correct, in the right direction. And then I'm just going to eyeball this, kind of centered. And then I just smooth it out. Okay, so now that we have this piece attached, this is the first part of our bag. So we'll do another one. This will be 3 3/8. We're not going to attach any of the bags until we get all of the paper on. So this will be 3 3/8 by 5 1/4. Okay, so there's our little strip for that one. I'll go ahead and attach that down. Running this adhesive on all 4 sides. I try to be as generous as I can with my adhesive, just so I know that the book isn't going to start coming apart, especially if I've made it for someone else. Not sure what I'm going to do with this one yet, but okay, so I'm just going to eyeball that and line it up a little bit. And you know, I don't like this piece because some of these foiled hearts have a line down the center. So I'm going to cut another one that doesn't have that. If there's one on here. Okay. I should have seen that before I started cutting. Oh well. I guess it's okay for you guys to see mistakes, because how else do you learn other than from mistakes you make? Okay, so 3 3/8. There we go. By 5 1/4. And that's my phone. Hang on a sec.